One thing that was very clear to me last week at the league meetings in Florida, there are a lot of issues right now between the league and the NFL Players Association that require some discussion. And the reality is the NFL Players Association isn't doing a lot of discussing about the issues. So how about this? We'll talk to a guy who was in the fray for 15 years as the Director of External Affairs for the NFLPA, is now the CEO and founder of Somebody Advisors. This somebody is George Atallah. George, how are you?
Really, really nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's great to have you. And this really is perfect because when the union doesn't engage, it's hard for the media and the fans to realize there are issues out there on which engagement may be happening behind the scenes, but we're not aware of it publicly. And I'm not here to question the wisdom of the NFLPA's recent vow of silence, basically, but you were there for part of the changeover from D. Smith to Lloyd Howell as executive director. Why do you think this pivot has happened strategically where the union just doesn't say much anymore?
I think it's a challenge to opine on the direction or the strategy that Lloyd and this current leadership is taking. Obviously, when I was there, we were very aggressive in terms of approaching issues, advocating for players and doing those things publicly. And public leverage was a major source of a success that we had, right? On health and safety issues, on economic issues, even the things that we've done around, the player survey were things that we used publicly to sort of leverage the NFL and the owners to do things to benefit players. Not my place really to get into why Lloyd and the team have not been as aggressive publicly. I think generally speaking, if I'm giving some grace, there are organizations that are going through changes, and those changes are coming on the heels of not just a transition from D to Lloyd, but also from JC to Jalen. And I think there's got to be a chemistry and an understanding of what the membership wants before an organization like the PA can be full-throated on a set of issues. And honestly, I think there's a little bit of hesitation only because there's still a transition time here. The leadership there is trying to get their heads around, well, where do we go from here in terms of negotiations with the league? How do we position a new crop of players given what's going on in college and NIL who are coming into the league? So I think there's just a lot of issues out there that are still unresolved with respect to the membership. And on one hand, yes, of course, you want to hear the union, you want to hear from them, you want them to be aggressive in advocating for players. On the other hand, there's a little bit of wisdom there in terms of let's get everybody on the same page and let's get everybody together before we have a full-throated approach of issue X, Y, or Z.
And one practical reality, your position had been vacant for several months. Liz Allen was hired recently as the new Director of External Affairs. We'll see what, if any, impact that has. And I don't want to be unfair in my criticism of the union. I just know that there was a time where when you requested comment, you'd get comment. More often than not now, there's no comment. And that's fine. That's their business. But I think there's a way to view the media as a tool for advancing the interests of the players. And I just don't feel like, and I know that you're not comfortable commenting on it, but from my perspective, I don't feel like they're taking full advantage of this tool, whether it's a shield, a sword, or somewhere in between. I don't feel like they're using it the way that it's been used in the past.
Well, again, I can only just speak to and stand by what I did when I was there and the team that we had and the aggressiveness that we took on these issues. And obviously that continued as much as we could through the transition. But I think for Liz, and I haven't met her yet, I wish her the best of luck. I'm sure she's going to do great. I know they went through an extensive process to find somebody to take on that role. And I'm sort of on the other side of that now, where I can come on and provide some insight and opinion on issues that fans care about and be as aggressive as I want without any guardrails. I think that's pretty refreshing and an opportunity for me to sort of be out here and talk about some of the experiences I've had in 15 years and maybe contribute to the discourse in a way that others might not.
And one of the things that fans should care about and players do care about, you mentioned it earlier, the report cards that are now a staple of Combine Week. Every year, when's the day the NFLPA is putting out the report cards? We make sure we have the press conference properly staffed because it's always eye-opening, and it's really the only way that anyone can hold owners directly and personally accountable. Because unless you're being investigated by Mary Jo White or Beth Wilkinson or someone else and in danger of selling your team involuntarily, there's really no way to hold an owner accountable. Where did this come from? Because I think it's one of the most genius things the NFLPA has ever done. How did this thing come to be?
I appreciate that. Look, when we looked at the history of leverage tools that we had to make changes, one thing that kept coming up in my conversations, and this is directly a result of my conversations with JC when he was president, was how do we create a better experience for the players? And the lessons that we learned out of that COVID year, we tried to take some of those experiences that players had that were uncomfortable, right? The testing every day you came into the locker room, the ways that you couldn't be around other people. We tried to take some of those lessons and we did a little bit of homework, and we found that there was a resolution in like the year 2000 by the Board of Player Reps that said, hey, we'd love to be able to survey NFL players and take a look at how different teams stack up with respect to their working conditions. And I think we just took that opportunity and just sort of ran with it and designed it that first year in a way that was a little surprising. We didn't know how effective it was going to be. Obviously, the timing of it was pretty sweet in terms of the combine and having people be able to see it full force. And year 2, it evolved, and year 3, it evolved from there. I think the bigger issue, Mike, with that tool, beyond just the public aspect of it, where people can really see the differences between, the number 1 and 2 teams in Minnesota and Miami and sort of the second tier teams and then everybody else at the bottom, you get a flavor for what the players are experiencing in their workplace on a day-to-day basis, beyond just the winning and losing, right? Because that's what fans care about. But what players really care about is what's their work experience like.
And one of the reasons I believe it's so effective, George, the reaction from some of the owners. You've gotten under their skin. Most recently, Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, called it totally bogus and even suggested it was a CBA violation. And I've looked through the CBA. I've searched all the relevant terms. I saw what Ben Fisher of Sports Business Journal wrote. This is perfectly legitimate and acceptable. If they want it to go away, it's a matter of collective bargaining. But there's nothing in the CBA that prevents you from doing this. And if anything, I feel like you steered away from things that would fall within the CBA, like medical care. That's not a category, and that's the one area that the CBA contemplates a joint survey.
Yeah, and I think the technical and legal aspects of it, I sort of leave that, and I left that when I was part of it, to the lawyers. The bigger issue here, and specifically to how the owners respond to it, even for the owners who begrudgingly say publicly, we don't like this, there are owners who have taken it to heart and look to make changes. And ultimately, that's what you want, right? You saw the Washington Commanders this year jump up from the last 2 years to like 5th or 6th or 7th, right, in the survey. So that was a massive increase, and they don't have the facilities that some of the other teams have. You see the LA Rams who take it seriously. You see other teams that take those issues that they can change, that are really easy changes, and go ahead and make those changes and implement them in a way that makes their life better. And look, for the Jets owner and Woody Johnson, I mean, not to make light of it, but I think the last time Trump was president, he was in the UK as ambassador. I hear that Greenland is nice this time of year. Maybe a lot of Jets fans might want him to take that ambassadorship at some point.
Well, I mean, the color scheme matches. He wouldn't have to get rid of a lot of his wardrobe if
There
it
you
come
go.
to that.
There you go.
What do you say, though, George? Because I've been talking to a lot of people about the survey, and Woody's comments, if nothing else, sparked conversation, especially when everybody was in Palm Beach for the league meetings last week. One person said to me, how do we know who's answering these questions? And some would say it's just the punters, the kickers, and the long snappers, that most players aren't paying attention. It's not a priority for a kid in his early 20s. He's not responding to the emails. What percentage of response were the players providing when you were doing it?
Yeah, I mean, look, for the 3 years that I was involved and for this most recent year, up until the end I was involved, we had just about a 75 to 80% response
Wow.
rate from players. And so you can't say that it's not scientifically accurate. In fact, the opposite's true. It's almost a census-like approach that the Players Association was taking, and the credibility of the survey was bolstered even more, and that there were experts behind the scenes who were running the survey. It was not a JC Treader project or Lloyd Howell project or a staff project. It was, this outside company that has expertise in workplace surveys that was doing it. And the standards were, the highest quality and the highest order. And I think the biggest shift in the dynamic that you've seen in the last 3 years is for NFL fans that care about the winning and losing and the paying money and free agency and that kind of stuff. What you've seen and the beauty of this survey is how many fans now understand and appreciate the player's perspective when it comes to what they think their teams are doing to treat their players, right? And do they really care about players? And could that potentially impact free agency decisions?
And I don't know why it wouldn't. I really don't. All things
That's
equal,
my view.
I'm going to go to the team that's getting higher grades in the NFLPA report card. Now, there may be mixed differences and different factors may be a higher priority for me, but I'm looking at those grades when I'm making my decision if everything is relatively equal from the money, et cetera, that the two teams are offering.
You just want to be treated well. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, at the end of the day, you want your employer to treat you well.
And I think that that's part of the tree that I try to chop at all the time. The fans line up behind the owners because they line up behind the teams and they identify with the teams. And the players, I don't think, get the appreciation that they should from the fans, because the fans know that every player is basically a part in a machine that is going to be pulled out at some point and replaced with another part. It's all temporary. The thing that is permanent for them is their loyalty to the fan or to the team. And the owner is far more permanent relative to the players. Yes, owners change from time to time, but it doesn't happen very often. So I've seen fans of teams with bad owners, objectively bad owners, who just defend the owners because what else can you do?
Yeah. And there's a challenge there as well, because let's take the case of teams that win frequently who have not rated well the last couple of years. There's a disconnect between competitive success and then the other part of it is what kind of culture are you creating for the players and the people that work there, right? And I think that to me is where we have to continue to bridge the gap and help people understand that the NFL culture for each locker room, one, is different than other places, right? I mean, I heard one of my good buddies, Victor Cruz, talk about how he was jarred when he left from New York to go to Chicago and how crazy he wasn't prepared for it. So there's an information gap that we were trying to bridge. But two, fans should care about it because it will have an impact on the culture of the place. And that all of that stuff contributes to winning, right? So if you're going to be in a place where you're not going to get the best sort of care for your family, how does that impact your commitment to the club when it comes time for you to make a decision about your future or make a decision about playing through some sort of minor injury? Like all of the things that we see in the NFL that help contribute to the success, I think those are things that really we need to highlight in terms of the culture of each club.
The story of the week last week, which is becoming, I think, one of the stories of the offseason, the fate of the tush push, the play that the Eagles have worked to perfection and no one else can truly mimic or stop. It has become, from the standpoint of those who oppose it, a safety issue. And it dawned on me recently, how is it a safety issue if the union isn't involved in the process? And specifically, if the union hasn't even formulated or provided an opinion. It seems presumptuous to me, for the league to just paint with a broad brush that it's a safety concern without any input from the union. And I can't think of a time where there was any safety issue that the league flagged without union involvement.
Well, I'm sure those conversations have been taking place behind the scenes, and you may not have heard about them. I may not have heard about them. I can tell you that going back to where we started this conversation, what is the strategy to try to implement change, and how are they going to be measured in terms of effectively driving that change? So if this one play is a safety issue, I know what I would want to know if I was sitting on the union side or even on the NFL side. What's the data to support it? How many injuries have there been per year? Can you even measure the type of injuries that happen on that particular play? How many times a year do they actually run that play? So those are all things that I would want to know. And then the second tier from that is, if it's not a collectively bargained issue, if it is a competition committee issue, are players being invited to the conversation? What input are they having on that particular discussion? We know that coaches and GMs and even owners have their opinions about that one play, but how much input do players have? And that was something from my experience in 15 years at the Players Association, was always a push and pull struggle, right? Are we at the table? Do we have a voice? Can we express ourselves? And we saw that with the hip drop tackle, right? Where players did express themselves. And despite all that, despite their protestations and their push and having a seat at the table, it still got voted the other way. So there's this interesting balance, I think, Mike, that you're describing, of where can not just the union, but the players in the league and the coaches and the GMs in this context come together and collaborate to make these rules not just make sense from a health and safety standpoint, but as a viewer of the game, you want to watch the game and not have 75 replays and have questionable decisions or have questions about how things are going to go. I think that's really the big issue.
I'm glad you mentioned the hip drop tackle, because I remember some of the pushback by the league last year when the players were against the change. The league said they're always against the rule changes. They're always against the safety changes. But I guarantee you, George, if the union would come out and say the tush push is a safety issue, that would be emblazoned by the league on anything and everything, because it feels to me that the league office is driving this bus to get rid of it. So they would sink their teeth into anything from the union that would support their desire to get that play out of the game, even if safety is a pretext for, we just want that play out of the game.
Yeah. And like I said, I think they have a decision to make. I'm on the other side of that now. And I think that they're trying to figure out, and hopefully will figure out very soon, how they're going to approach these issues strategically to be effective. And I think they have their view on having a seat at the table. And I know there were players at the competition committee this past year at the combine just a couple months ago. So I know that they've got an eye on making sure that players have a voice. I think for the future of these issues, and what I think fans care about the most, is not just how the sausage is made part, but is there going to be an outcome that makes sense, that from a viewer's perspective, you're not questioning every rule change or every flag, or there's inconsistencies, or these rules were made arbitrarily, right? I think that's really the biggest thing, is how do we ensure that going into next season, everybody's clear on, I mean, you remember, like, what's a catch, what's not a catch, right? How many months and potentially even a year's worth of headlines was that? I think the biggest challenge for everybody in this game is, are all the stakeholders at the table, and do they have input into making sure that things are clear and reasonable and make sense?
And that's very well put. And that's the key. And I wonder whether or not the NFL is as concerned about that as they should be, because there can be intended, unintended, expected, and unexpected consequences of every rule change. And we'll see how the tush push plays out, and whether to what extent the union articulates a public position, whether it's asked by the NFL to be involved and to partner with the league in eradicating this perceived safety problem. It's become really the biggest story of the 2025 offseason. All right, another story that is lingering, and you were involved 5 years ago in the CBA that authorized the playing of 17 regular season games. If the over-under is 2029, are we going to have 18 before that or after that?
I mean, before. My gut tells me before.
Why?
I think there is a massive push by the owners to get to a place where they can time it with the last of the, with the expiration of the TV deals, the upcoming broadcast deals. And this 18 game thing, look, a little bit of history. They wanted it in 2009. They directly stated that they wanted to lock players out in 2011, which was one of their goals, was to get 18 games. The 2011 deal prevented them from doing that. And the 2020 deal prevented them from going to 18 without collective bargaining and bargaining a new CBA. So when you look at the landscape of media and broadcast rights moving forward, and this ties in, I think, to the international opportunity, my gut tells me that they're going to want to time a new collective bargaining agreement with 18 games around the broadcast deals or before that, so that they can get potentially one last consolidated set of media deals before, who knows when the next fracturing of media and streaming is going to come. And that's why I think it's going to be before.
What do you think the union's position on 18 is? Does it accept the fact that it's inevitable? Or is there truly a belief that no way, no how, we're not going to go to 18? 17 is the absolute limit.
I can just take them at their face value of what they said at the Super Bowl press conference, which is it's not something that they're interested in. It's not something that they are talking about now. But again, a little bit of behind the scenes here. The real determination for a global collective bargaining agreement negotiation is really founded in what do the players want? What are their priorities? What do they want to go get? And what are they willing to give up to do that or to get those things? And on the other side, you have the NFL that is driving towards revenue growth, driving towards expansion, driving towards big ideas and big potential. We think all that is great. Honestly, I think the players should be happy that the owners are thinking big and want to drive revenue. And that's a bet that we made in 2011 when we did a revenue share deal, right? Where we bet on NFL owners making more money and growing the game. And we've seen an exponential growth over the last 15 years in terms of revenue generation and growth and all that. And that trickles down to the players, obviously. So when it comes to 18 game, I think it's a little bit misinformed or tough to talk about it in a vacuum, right? Because there's so many issues that fall behind that are of importance to the players that they need to sort of coalesce around. And I know that they're going through that process now, which is understanding what the player priorities are, really getting a sense for what they want to push for. But then when you get to the table, you actually have to be able to execute those things.
Do you believe if there isn't an agreement before March of 2031, when the CBA expires, to add an 18th game, the owners will lock out the players until they agree to an 18th game?
Depends on what the dynamic is. I mean, that is so far into the future in terms of collective bargaining years. So many things have changed. I mean, we had a Christmas game on Netflix last year, right? Like, you couldn't have told me in 2021 that was going to be a thing with Beyonce as the halftime show. I mean, so there's all sorts of creative ways and issues that are going to come up between now and 2031. I think the biggest challenge for everybody in our business is, given the landscape that we've got in terms of where the league wants to go, what the dynamics are between the owners, what the, frankly, economic situation is in America at the moment for the next couple of years, how that's going to play out. What are those challenges that are going to drive decisions in our business? And where can everybody come together to make the best decision and make sure that the game continues to grow at the rate it's been growing?
Do you think that talks for an 18th game have already begun? And if not, when do you think they'll start?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by talks, right? I mean, I think that there have been sort of informal discussions about 18 games. And I think that, of course, there are some owners that are for it and some owners that are against it. By the way, it's not just the players who are trying to coalesce around issues that they care about. It's the owners too. When we went through the negotiations in 2020, they proposed 18 games in the summer of 2019 as sort of a first sort of, hey, what do you guys think? And we rejected that summarily. I think the owners also have some coalescing to do around is this something that we really want? And is this something that we want to do in the face of, is the game saturated as it is, right? Like 17 games is kind of a lot. The season's a long time. And viewership, of course, seems to be growing despite all of the stuff and challenges and competition that we've got. But there's got to be some form of collaboration and people coming together to decide what they want to do. And I don't think anybody's there yet.
You make a great point as it relates to having too many games. They're hoping to potentially change the seeding in the playoffs in order to make the late season games more meaningful, have fewer teams that will deliberately rest players. But the reality is, as the season grows and grows, there's more opportunity from the good to separate from the bad. And when you get to those last few games, they're not going to matter. Just like baseball, 162 games. Sometimes you get a pennant race down to the wire. Most of the time you have clinching well in advance. And I think that's a reality. Go to 18. That's going to be an even more pronounced reality. Flag football.
Let's do it.
Olympics. I reported yesterday, and I've heard this from multiple different people, the league and the owners are not on the same page about this. I think if I owned a team, I'd say, why do I want to loan my player? I've got a contract. Paragraph 3 of the standard player contract makes it clear that that player is not allowed to do any other football activities for anyone else or any other activity that has a significant risk of personal injury, not a risk of significant personal injury, but a significant risk of personal injury of any kind. I have the ability to take him to court and get an injunction like the Titans did with Pac-Man Jones in 2007. I'm not giving up my investment in this player who's under contract to go chase Olympic gold when it's not going to add to my bottom line. And if anything else, it's going to put my interests at risk. So with that on one side, where are the players on, or where do you think they are? And what have you heard when you were there on this idea of having the ability, if they want to go play flag football in the Olympics in 2028?
A lot of them have publicly stated already. You don't need me to tell you that they're excited about it, right? I mean, I think representing your country in Olympic sport is pretty incredible opportunity for you. And I've had the opportunity to know tangentially a couple of Olympians, and I know how proud they are to represent the country and put the flag around their neck when they compete and go there and represent America and the United States. I think you're going to have a hard time convincing active players who are really interested in participating from not doing it. And I think that's going to be a story that we, will continue to track and follow heading into the LA Olympics, especially in Los Angeles, right? I think especially in LA where it's on home soil and the game in flag football is growing. I mean, we had just in our household alone, my oldest daughter played in her first flag football game this weekend. And she was like so excited and energized by being part of the sport. And you're seeing it grow at the youth level. You're seeing it grow amongst women and girls, especially not just in the United States, but elsewhere. And I think those are going to be factors that will lead to some sort of push from active players who want to participate to be there in LA. And I think it'd be great for the United States if we had active NFL players there. The flip side, of course, is true where you do have to have some injury protection. You do have to have, to your point about the legal issues, there has to be some agreement and understanding between the players union, the league, and the ownership groups about what are the ways that we can make this work and also protect the players as well. And I think that's a big question mark that's yet to be determined. But I also know that, again, be hard pressed to get a guy like Tyreek who said, I really want to be there in 28. If he's still in the NFL, it's going to be hard for somebody to look him in the face and say, yeah, no, you can't wear the flag.
My guess, throwing a dart.
Throw a dart.
There may not even be a dartboard there. But if I had to make a guess, I'd say that the Olympics, to the extent that it continues, it's going to become a place where recently retired players go to put the icing on their careers. And Tyreek Hill by 2028 may not be playing in the NFL. Mike Evans, who said he wants to play Olympic flag football, he likely won't be playing in the NFL. So you get guys who are fresh from the NFL. They're the Olympic team. They go kick everybody's butt. They get their gold medal and they walk off into the sunset. And the problem is it only happens every 4 years. So your career's got to end just right so you can go do it. But I think that's where it's going to go, because I don't see the owners. Now, maybe Roger Goodell is going to be able to twist their arms. I don't see them putting their players at risk, and I don't see them underwriting the risk of a serious injury and having to pay a full $25 million salary because insert name of player, because I'm not going to name names and jinx somebody, tears an ACL playing flag football.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. It's like anything else, it's going to be a challenge. And you've seen the Pro Bowl go through the same thing, right? You've seen the Pro Bowl go through a very similar process of, we want to keep the product competitive, but we also want to make sure that players don't get hurt in a quote unquote meaningless game. And I think that's a real challenge that we've all got to sort of grapple with if we're in this business, is understanding where those lines are. Is there collaboration? Is there an understanding? You can't ultimately, in any sport, I mean, I'm a weekend warrior when I play hoops, right? You can't wrap me up in a mothball and say, oh, you're not going to sprain an ankle this weekend, or we're going to have to protect you from spraining an ankle. Like, it's going to happen. And so I think how we put in measures to both protect the players and give them an understanding that this is what they're going through is the best way to go. One other point to you about international and Olympics, I think there are a significantly growing group of players who have international citizenship, right? And so I think you're going to see a lot of active players with Nigerian descent or other places who want to represent their country in the Olympics sort of go the route of representing their mother country. And I think that'll be a really cool dynamic, is when you see current or former NFL player from a different country line up against an NFL player from the United States. That'll be kind of cool to see too.
Oh, and I'm all for that. It can't just be the United States versus a world that doesn't have football players like we can produce. To the extent that NFL quality players can play for other countries, I think it just makes for a more competitive and compelling tournament. All right, I have one more question to ask you before I do it, though. I promised that I would give you, not that you asked for it, but this was my promise, because I'm imposing on your time. I want to give you a chance to tell us about your new venture. And I respect anybody that walks away from a steady job and enters the world of who knows what's going to happen. The CEO and founder of Somebody Advisors. Tell me what you're doing and tell me what you hope to do with that business.
I appreciate that. I really do. And yes, you are correct. I did ask for it, but we'll gladly talk about it. Look, for 15 years at the NFL Players Association, and even for a few years before that in my career, I was fortunate enough to be faced with existential challenges for a business or for a company or for players. And I think going into this experience, I'm trying to draw on all of those challenges that we overcame, whether it was the first CBA, the 2020 deal, COVID, playing through COVID, all of the gates that you and I sparred over the phone that we would talk about, Deflategate and Bountygate and all the others.
We did more agreeing than sparring.
We did, but every now and then, but that was part of the relationship that you built with people, right? Was that you had a trust and respect. And I think for me and the company that we're trying to build with Somebody, is we want to not just draw from those experiences that we had in solving those big existential problems. And we want to take those things and the power of sports and apply them to business issues and businesses that might be going through turmoil or might need guidance in picking out solutions for their companies. And I think that's really where we're going to find our groove, is for all the problem solving experience that we've had, how do we go into it with a different mindset of working with people through trust and discretion and integrity and character and all the things that we have in terms of values, and then applying what we learned from those gates and all the challenges and existential issues that we had, and helping people solve big problems. That's what we're doing.
Oh, and I think it's awesome. Anytime somebody who works hard and is talented takes a risk and knows it's a risk, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're embarking on a new beginning, and fingers crossed, and I hope it goes well for you. All right, before we go, this is something that came up this morning on PFT Live. Devin McCourty and I were talking about various different union issues as it relates to voluntary workouts, et cetera. And one thing that he touched on, because he was involved in the union, as you know, when he was playing, why aren't more quarterbacks, big name quarterbacks, actively involved in union leadership, management, presidency, team representatives? Because he and I both agree that the union would be so much stronger if the guy, the franchise quarterback, all of them would come together and be involved in the direction of the NFLPA?
Well, the irony of that is during the time that I was there, we did have at times quarterbacks involved. I mean, Brady, Manning, and Breeze, all three of them, as you know, in 2011 were very involved in our player leadership and put their names on the lawsuit.
Yes.
So that and Drew was on our executive committee for a long time. So I think there's a balance between making sure that the guy, the quarterback, the star player is involved in the union, but also making sure that you're going to have players who really care about it and are there every day and are showing up to do the meetings and show up and make the resolutions. I mean, part of the challenge that I think fans don't quite have an appreciation for with the union is it is a democratic institution in that it's the players who make the decisions. They have to sort of go in and build a process for themselves and govern the way that the direction of the institution goes. And I'm not sure that a lot of players who are in the sort of star category, and Devin and Jason have been to meetings and they certainly fit that description of being in the star category. A lot of them don't necessarily want to be part of that. I'll tell you one funny story that's been publicly documented of the guy showing up and not necessarily always being helpful. When Aaron Rodgers was part of the negotiations in 2020, you know, there was a concern and there was like both sides of the coin, right? Like Aaron's showing up to the meetings, which is great, but is he going to be able to represent the will and the issues that the players and the broader membership have, right? And you end up in a situation where he can stand up and say, well, I'm going to vote no for this deal because I don't want any football to start until August 1st. And I'm not sure that those types of things are helpful to getting a negotiation across the line. So you have to find a balance between, yes, star players, big names need to be more involved, 100%. And as I tell players all the time, even now, I've had conversations with them. Well, what about this? What about that? We didn't like this. We didn't like that. I'm like, guys, you are the union. It's up to you guys to be involved, take control of the issues. It's your governance after all. And I think that's part of the challenge that we've always had in our history is making sure that guys continue to believe that, but also act on it.
Well, and as it turns out, George, Aaron Rodgers might have found a way to avoid any football activities until August 1 by not signing a contract, not picking a team, and that very well may be what he's doing and why he's doing it. We'll leave it there. I appreciate your time. I took more of it than I intended to, but it was very helpful to me, and I think it'll be helpful to the audience, to people who truly care about the business, the players, and making sure that that balance is in place between management and labor. George Atallah, CEO and founder of Somebody Advisors. We wish you all the best and hope to talk to you again soon.
I'll be back. Thank you.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.